a couple things. Kind of like Supervisor Chairman said about the misdemeanor charges. Some people that are cultivating medical marijuana aren't criminals, and if they did violate the ordinance, whether knowing so or didn't, that could give them a criminal record, and I don't think that would be best to create more criminals here and put people in jail. That we already have overcrowded jails, but that as well as about less than 10 acres being indoor. Indoor cultivation requires a lot of power, a very, very large amount of power. When you're using lots of power, your fire risk increases drastically. So with us being in the current state of drought that we're in, as well as already having serious fire danger during the summertime, that's when most electricity is going to be used for air conditioning as well as keeping the room completely climate controlled. So the fire danger during the summertime would definitely increase. Just in my opinion, I don't know that that would be the best thing to do, is create something that could cause potentially more fire hazards in our already dry forest. But
Randy, I have a question. How do you then deal with these small, dense communities with parcels that are like a quarter acre or a half acre? How do you deal with those?
My recommendation would be an enclosed greenhouse or a hoop house, just being completely enclosed. That would dampen the smell as well as keep it out of sight, and is potentially like indoor. You're inside a structure, but you're not creating a fire hazard. It's not, as well as with indoor, is you create an all-year growing problem. It's not something that's just going to go on during the summertime. When cannabis is cultivated outdoors, it's a lot easier to produce enough for your yearly needs, enough medicine for your yearly needs. When it's produced indoor, not so much the case. You're more or less cultivating all year long, and like I said, in summertime is when serious power usage comes around because of the intense heat outside. With that being said, I would say a recommendation for me would be enclosed greenhouses, just to kind of semi-dampen the smell issue, as well as get rid of the vision problem, seeing it.
How do you define a greenhouse?
An enclosed structure that I don't know if you guys want to define it as something as permanent building.
Well, there is a definition in the draft ordinance. I'm enjoying this exchange again. I apologize. There is a definition of what constitutes indoors in the early part of the ordinance, like page 2, perhaps, maybe page 3, I don't recall. But it talks about a substantial structure. I think the concern is if there's the adoption by this board of a kind of tiered approach, and in those 0 to however many acres they establish, it says no outdoor, but indoor is okay. What's indoor? Does indoor mean? Does it mean PVC tubing with viscoline plastic over the top? That's going on here somewhere in the county.
Yeah, exactly. In my opinion, indoor cultivation would mean the use of high intensity discharge lights. Lights that pull extreme amounts of power, 1,000 watts, 600 watts per light.
So indoor is not in a sort of glass house or greenhouse that derives its light source from outside.
Exactly. Not by my opinion. My opinion, indoor would be fully artificial lighting.
You're not visible from outside.
Exactly. You're not using any sort of natural light, or you're not using any sort of the natural ecosystems that are provided in farming outside, where you have wind, you have cold nights, you have warm days. That all plays into pesticides and fungicides, where indoors the amount of pesticides and fungicides used is far greater than outdoors because of those reasons. When you're outside, you have the intensity of the sun that produces different UV rays. It produces far more lumens, and just the intense spectrum that it gets, the wide light spectrum that you get from it, produces a lot healthier plant, just like we do. If we were to sit inside 24 hours a day, our immune systems would be very low. And it's the same thing that goes on with plants in general, not just cannabis. Is when they're inside, their immune systems are very low comparative to being outside, where they've evolved to live. They've been there for so long, that's what they're used to. When you move it inside, you create all sorts of different problems. But that, as well as the problem with indoor gardens too, Yeah, it creates the all-year smell problem. But the last thing I wanted to talk about was with plant limits and property line setbacks. At like Mr. Chairman had recommended at 2,000 feet is about half a mile. If you really look at a 40-acre parcel that was in, say, a rectangular shape rather than a perfect square, that's going to be fairly difficult to do, even on a 40-acre parcel.
So you got a suggestion?
I mean, 1,000 feet from the school, so I mean 500 feet from neighbors, from a dwelling, like you said, 500 feet from a dwelling should give you more than enough area to be away from them, where it's not in their sight and they're not dealing with smell completely. As well as there was one thing stated about the problem.
So now, Randy, you know that this draft ordinance does have a misdemeanor penalty provision.
Yeah, that's why.
And that's an option, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I just, like Mr. Chapman had said, was just creating the criminal record as well as potential of going to jail. People that have never been to jail, it's a very, very scary thing. You know, you don't know what to expect. You don't want to go to jail. So just being a misdemeanor is kind of overall just a scary thing for people that are mostly law-abiding citizens. They're not following an ordinance or doing something that's not up to ordinance standards. I don't know that a criminal prosecution would be.
And so we're clear, that provision is included, but I believe the mindset, at least that I have going into this ordinance, is that is essentially the last remedy that should be applied, and perhaps only after someone has had an administrative fine applied to them and that hasn't worked, and maybe two of those, I don't know,
fail to come in compliance with the ordinance.
And a criminal charge, let's also be clear that it's possible that the misdemeanor provision could, in a certain set of circumstances, be the first remedy that's sought. I just don't want to, it's one of several remedies provided for in the draft ordinance as a tool, if you will.
Maybe infraction at first, and if they fail to come into compliance after 1-2 attempts or something, maybe then the misdemeanor charge. I just don't think right off the bat a misdemeanor charge would be best. And
certainly the authority to charge the person with a misdemeanor would be exclusively that of the district attorney. They retain all of their independent prosecutorial authority, which could include, even if it's submitted to them for prosecution as a misdemeanor, they could say, not interested. Or not interested as a whole on any of these, or I just don't like this one. So there's still all sorts of different options there.
Okay. And last thing about asking neighbors for cultivation, to get consent to cultivate from a neighbor. If you really think about it, most neighbors, you're going to have several neighbors around you. One of them is going to be against it. Regardless of whether you're following all the ordinance recommendations and you're in complete compliance, they could ruin it for everyone. So anybody that is cultivating on over a 20 or 40 acre, whatever the recommended acreage limits are, more than likely would be stopped cultivating by one of the neighbors that is around you. It just comes with the territory of cannabis. There's very few people that are completely against it, but there's a lot of people that are on the fence but do not want it anywhere near them. So even if they're within 1,000 feet from you or 2,000 feet from you, they, being your neighbor on a large property, can effectively say no. That's where I think coming back to the ordinance of recommending property line setbacks or setbacks from the neighbor's residence, I think that would more or less solve the problem of being a nuisance, where instead of just saying if the neighbor says no, it's no, because it's probably going to cut out most of all the gardens. There's going to be a neighbor around that says no.
I agree, Randy. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mansion.
Thank you for your time. Why not just make it like a code infraction? I put a roof on my house without a permit. What do I get? Code infraction. Why criminalize it? Why make it a misdemeanor? If the provision's in there for a misdemeanor, somebody's going to piss somebody off, and that somebody's going to use it against you, no matter what. Shouldn't even be that. As far as while we're regulating prescription medication, a lot of these same limitations should be applied to all prescription medications. Talk to law enforcement, you're going to find them, or with Child Protective, any of that, they run into issues with prescription meds in people's homes more often than they do with marijuana in people's homes. Same thing goes to alcohol. You should lock your alcohol up so your teenage children can't get to it. And it should be monitored and regulated and fined. And why not? Well, we're going crazy. Let's go crazier. It's all convoluted. It's like watching Fox News. It makes no sense to me. I'm against the ordinance entirely. Now, I live in the city. This doesn't necessarily apply to me. I'm coming a little late to the game on this county thing. I've been attending meetings with the city and stuff. And everybody's working real hard to come up with a solution to this problem. But the truth of the matter is, the people in here that come to these meetings, that grow, they're trying to do the right thing. The people that are growing it and selling it on the illicit market are jumping up and down with joy. I guarantee you. They want to see these ordinances. Then they're going to grow it and sell the shit out of it and make that much more money. So in the end, what do you accomplish? You make the black market better. Instead, as far as I'm concerned, it should be legalized for recreation just like alcohol is. If you want a real problem, let's go with alcohol. Now, I don't drink. That's my choice. I use medicinal marijuana. I need it. I'm still going to use it, regardless of your ordinance or your laws or your whatever. If I choose not to grow it, where am I going to get it? From the black market. So what have you accomplished in the end? What have you accomplished? All this uber conservative Lassen County, and everybody's against all these big government. Now, this is a perfect example of big government sticking their noses in where there's no place for it. It's all ridiculous.
Thank you, but the reason we're here is because the people come to us that we don't want our little kids looking at all this bad to see 99 plants. That's why we're
There shouldn't be 99 plants.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Okay.
If you go by the law, if you read 215 and 420, it talks about 6 mature, 12 immature for every prescription that you can produce.
Thank you.
Are you cutting me off?
Well, you can get to your point. If you ask why, and I answered your question. We didn't decide to do this. My constituents, the people, came to me and said, help us out.
Where are the law enforcement statistics on this as far as...
I don't have any of that, sir.
Shouldn't we have that? Shouldn't that be included in this?
I don't think so.
Why not? You're talking about it being for the betterment of the community and a public safety, a public health issue and all this. I think some statistics ought to be looked at.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you.
Well, of course you're not. You don't want to hear the truth.
I want to represent my constituents, and that I will do.
Hey, don't piss them off.
You're carrying me back a long way, but I think I got Annie Westenberg. I said that right, Annie.
Yes, you did.
Yes, you look sharp today. He does.
Got me here.
Looking sharp. You look good today.
I went to wear ties because you guys always wear ties.
Okay, Annie, go ahead.
So I'm Annie
Happy St.
Westenberg,
Patty's Day.
and I
I live at 3095 Johnsonville Road. Unfortunately, it's not in the county, although I live on about an acre. And I have grown medical marijuana for about, this would be the 5th year. And I have a very serious concern that I hope you'll also consider. It's for the safety of everyone, the safety of the garden, and that the plants don't go where they shouldn't, the medicine doesn't get stolen. And that's something that I've had to deal with because I just live down at the other end of the block. And the only way we can cope with that is to have full-time, 24-hour personal surveillance of someone being there. People will get over the fences. They will come armed. It can happen. And so I question the safety for people that are out there on 40 acres. I lived out in the county, way out for 20 years. And out on the ranches, we had problems with people stealing saddles or whatever they could get into. So just leaving these out in the open, even though they're fenced, still requires somebody to watch them a lot. And the reason I'm bringing this up for everybody's safety is also the fact that when you grow in a small group, whether it's 4, 5, 6 people, you can accommodate for all of this. And growing in a collective group is something that everybody seems to have not taken seriously. Well, we have the state 420, we have the guidelines there for growing together. And we've kind of all skipped over this, and I want to bring it back. I'm going to talk about it with the city as well, because I think for a safety feature, growing in a small group is wiser than an individual or two trying to defend their little plot of marijuana out somewhere. So perhaps the enclosed aspect of a greenhouse for those of us that do want to grow outside is an option. So looking closely at defining those greenhouses would be important for those that opt to go that way. Unless you have any questions for me, that's the only thing I wanted to say.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Ooh, Dennis, you're last.
I didn't realize I'd be able to speak now.
Tell us something new we don't know.
Okay, I'm a medical marijuana patient. I grow my own plants on my own property. I live in a travel trailer. If this ordinance passes the way it's drafted, it's going to knock me out of the box. I would have to move to Honey Lake Campground. Then I won't be residing on my own property, so I won't be able to grow the plants if I move to Honey Lake Campground. If I stay living on my property in the travel trailer, I'll be violating the zoning ordinances that says I have to live in a approved dwelling with a foundation and walls and a roof. And I can't. I'm a senior on a fixed income. I can't afford the smallest possible building that you could design that would have a foundation, walls, and a roof, an acceptable, legal fire sprinkler system in it, a septic system that is designed to be one size fits all for the entire state of California. I can't afford these things. So I'm not in business or anything. I just grow my own plants. But this ordinance is going to knock me out of the box. Now you live in Doyle, which is way, way far away from Lake Forest, when people were complaining about having a bad grow. But you had a situation with bad dogs, you had a situation with illegal fence, and you had a situation with a neighbor who was antisocial, and everybody blames it on marijuana. It wasn't the marijuana, it was bad people, bad dogs, and bad buildings that caused this thing to come up in the first place. Well, I mean, this recent thing. So all I'm saying is this, like, I think that this ordinance, as it's drafted, is overly intrusive, it's overly regulating, it's like, it's going to be difficult for a lot of people to comply with, and I think that it's just like somebody got, this gentleman over here in gray, he said, like, are we looking for small government? Well, we got a 13-page draft ordinance. Like, what is it going to look like when the state of California legalizes marijuana? You're going to have a draft ordinance with 100 pages in it. Excuse me. Thank you very much. I know I went over my 3 minutes. Yes?
At the end of the day, we've got 4, 5, 6 real problem growth that really affected our communities. What's your answer to them?
A problem with security affecting this community, you say?
No, the problem growth that have caused lots of problems in like Janesville and Lake Forest. What's your answer to those?
Well,
okay,
I'm not in that position. And if I could remind you that Lake Forest is not in your district and not a lot of these other guys' districts too. So, you know, like, are you going to base your vote on what happened in Lake Forest? What I'm saying is it the question of security?
Well, they've got bad dogs. They've had a lot of bad interaction with their neighbors, and it's just something that we have to, as a board, have to address. It's not fair to these people that are living by these bad grows, and it's affecting everybody out here. These bad grows are affecting every one of you people. So what is your solution to these bad grows?
Okay.
I know you got it. I don't know if you
Okay, I think I got it now. And the solution I would have is to wait until the neighbors complain about it, and then go in and say, like, you know, what's happening here that this person is doing wrong? Like, has he got bad dogs that run out in the street and won't let kids walk by there? That's not good. That's not because of pot. That's because of somebody with bad dogs. Like, I don't think that demonizing this plant, making sure that nobody can see it, is going to solve anything.
You're not getting what I'm asking you. I'm looking for a solution for the neighbors that are living around these bad grows. What is their solution?
Right. Well, like, if a person is breaking the law, you know, they have recourse there. Like, if you write the ordinances that are really strict and restrictive, and then only enforce them in cases where people complain, that may be a solution to the problem.
Thank you, Dennis. Do you have anything else you want to tell?
I have nothing else to say unless there's any other questions.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? We'll go back to Maury first. Maury, go ahead and just now.
Well, as the potential code or enforcement officer, I just want to bring something up that I'm not quite understanding. We've transcended or transitioned to this potential sliding scale. And council has brought up the fact that we're requiring people to live on the property where the grow is taking place, either the caregiver or the patient. And so my heartache at this point is that we have an original ordinance that talks about not having dispensaries, not having collectives. And so if you have, 2 people living on a 40-acre parcel and they're growing 80 plants, where are the 76 or whatever, 70 other plants going? And how do you reconcile, we're saying we're not letting this marijuana out into the world. It's only going to the people that need it on the premises. How do you reconcile that extra amount of marijuana? And I might be wrong, maybe we need to change the premise that we're working on. But I just don't want to have some kind of inconsistency within our ordinances and the expectation that we're enforcing something that says we're not allowing people to grow for other people off the premises. But so where's all that talk go?
So the short answer to the question is that A person could presumably get a recommendation for 99 plants if they went down to a physician and got one, although that's a whole other conversation about the propriety of getting a 99 plant recommendation. Nevertheless, they would, if this ordinance is adopted with a plant count limitation per patient or per primary caregiver, be subject to that, notwithstanding what the recommendation says, because they would be limited by operation of law. And so, if you've got the 40-acre parcel and you've got two people that are living on there, say one a patient, one a primary caregiver, each has got a recommendation. Each has a recommendation for, I don't know, 20, 40 plants, something of the like. They could still grow up to the amount permitted pursuant to conditions of cultivation that you establish pursuant to the parcel size, if that's how you do it through the tiered approach, as long as it's within the scope of the recommendation. Does that answer your question?
Not really.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Burns, we have an issue as well as how much medicine by state regulation or by law does a person require. Yes, it says so much by as his physician requires, but it can't go more than 3, 5, or 8 pounds. And these plants can grow 3 or 4 pounds of plant if they're out there.
I beg to differ, and the reason I beg to differ is because I recognize that 215 was adopted in '96, and it didn't really have any limits expressed in it. And then the legislature came along in 02, 03, something of the like, and dealt with SB 420, and that made an effort to impose limitations. The Kelly case is what stands out in my mind, which is a Cal Supreme case, I believe it's a Cal Supreme case, that essentially deals with the proposition that the legislature may not impose a limit by law which was not contemplated by the people through initiative. And so to the degree that the Kelly, that SB 420 sought to place a limitation on the numbers of plants that one could possess as a medical marijuana patient or primary caregiver, the Kelly decision essentially said the legislature didn't have the juice to do that. That's my understanding of the law.
Okay.
So,
This man here has a question. Take the name.
Yes, my name is Ken Davis. I'm a resident of Levitt Lake. One of the questions that was asked is where this all first started. Basically, people, citizens from Lake Forest and citizens from Janesville was the two biggest issues. And the issues were these people growing 99 plants. And it's up to me, that's just way too many. As far as all the medical people that need their medicine and stuff, we're on a very low level of plants, probably no more than 6 or 12. All I see is these, with 99 plants, these people are out there profiteering. That's not what this whole idea was for. It was designed for each patient to be able to grow his own medicine to provide for herself. That's almost becoming obsolete anymore. I like the way that this ordinance is drafted. The only other things that I'd like to say about it is the city has complied with that too. As far as the setbacks, I live up at Levitt Lake. The properties do have a pretty good sized backyard, but as far as the setbacks, we have a daycare center out there, which I believe that falls underneath the school definition. If we can reduce that to 500 feet, not 1,000 feet, the city adopted the same measure. Also, with the setbacks of the fence, instead of putting your garden directly out in the middle for a big prime target for anybody to go and look in your backyard, 6-foot fence, I'm 6'3" and I can look over any 6-foot fence. So it's an out of sight, out of mind type of ordeal that we'd like to deal with this. But as far as the setbacks, I believe 15 foot would be more reasonable. It would give us a little bit more room to grow our plants. We're still complying with pretty much everything you have in your ordinance. Other than that, I just, like I said, the only two things I see is, well, three.